Is mind-body therapy the last resort, or should it perhaps be the first part of your healing journey? So often in this part of the world, we are conditioned to think that surgery and medicine are the first point of call and the first go-to for any form of suffering or illness or difficulty that we have. And whilst that's great, and I'm not knocking it, it saved my life on a few occasions, it also hasn't always been the route to my healing at a deeper level. Even from an early age, before I even trained as a physiotherapist decades ago, I used to say there has to be more to medicine than drugs and surgery. And I really believe that now. Let's think of a car. If a car was considered to be not an integrated system, then we'd have a problem being a mechanic and figuring out how it works. So a wheel is no use without an engine, and an engine's no use without the wheel. And actually, neither of them are any use without a driver. To assume that one thing is the driving force with no impact on the other is futile. If you've got a wheel bearing on and you can feel the wobble, that's going to impact with ripples throughout the whole car, perhaps create other problems elsewhere, and actually a reasonably attuned driver will probably feel that there is something off. Yeah, especially someone like a highly attuned rally driver. Now, there's a point to me saying this, because our sense of whether we can feel these things and how attuned we are to ourselves, yeah, and also how attuned the practitioner is, the therapist, the clinician, is to being sensitive to an understanding of the relationship of the entire system is key to healing. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Let me explain. The nervous system and the autonomic nervous system is highly connected with the immune system, but the nervous system is not the driving force. The immune system also will amplify and change the activation within the nervous system. Our emotional state and our cognitive state, which can be not entirely a brain-based thing, but as increasing evidence suggests, a fascial-based thing and an embodied experience. We are moving now into, finally, a paradigm of embodiment, and I think that's not a bad term. So maybe I'm an embodiment practitioner, I don't know. Because one of the challenges I have is, who am I, what am I? And people sometimes find that difficult to really pigeonhole me. But the whole point is, what I've done is I've had to become a multi-skilled practitioner in many, many domains. Because if we only study one facet, if we only study physical musculoskeletal medicine, we're going to get stuck at a point and we won't understand why the problem keeps coming back. Why, if I release this person's tension in their neck or their back, does it return 12 months later? Well, I'm not being a very thorough, deep understanding practitioner. So the root cause and the interrelationship of systems in the body is imperative to understand disease. Because if we don't, we could forget how the immune system, you can be an immunologist and that's great, but if you don't understand the psychological impact on the autonomic nervous system, then that you are missing something. And if you don't understand that the gut could have been disturbed by antibiotics, for example. I've seen many people who the tipping point for them has been some antibiotics which has disturbed the gut microbiome. But when you look at the backstory, they were hanging on by a thread, so to speak. But that change perhaps activated differences in the mast cells, information up through the vagus nerve, which then fed back into other autonomic disturbance, and then this person then suddenly develops POTS or MCAS or different kind of problems. And is it just the gut that's the problem? No. But if we ignore the guts, or if we ignore the psychology, if we ignore we can't help the person deeply heal. So an integrated mind-body, and I even hate that expression because it separates mind and body. An embodied human understanding of the whole human being as a system, as much as we possibly can, as in any one human being, is critical to healing. And so I would argue that rather than being the last resort, and particularly as it's less invasive, why would one go for surgery? And we know that the outcomes of surgery, can be great. But very often, if we look at the ones that don't get better, the failed back pain surgical patient, well, why? Well, perhaps it was never really entirely mechanical, or it was only a piece of the jigsaw, and they've only addressed one part. Or even maybe that was just an artifact. Half the world's going around with disc bulges that don't have pain, so we can't just take the disc out and assume that that's going to resolve the problem, because it's not seeing the whole system. So I would argue that an embodiment practitioner that is able to look at multi-systems, not just a talk therapist, not just a physical therapist, not just a somatic therapist, somebody that can look at all of these things together, and to have spent a lifetime studying many disciplines and have abilities to actually work at all of those levels, should be the first point of contact. And that should be actually probably where medicine is going. It should be trained doctors to be looking at this, not steered by the pharmacology industry in some way. But to know when pharmacology is really useful, and just a bit of that, and a bit of that, and a bit of that. And that should be really the first port of call and not the last.